Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of You Are the One You Seek. I'm your host, David, and today I am reading Sexuality and Spirituality from the Jeshua channelings. So this is one of the public channelings where Pamela got in front of a crowd of people and channeled Jeshua, and there were some questions, I believe. This wasn't really done in a Q&A format, but I think there were some kind of themes that were being brought up, or maybe it was just Jeshua was sensing what the people in the room were thinking about. I really don't know exactly the specifics of the setup, but the bottom line is that it was a public channeling, and it really is interesting how the book is divided between private and public. Now, you can also find this from JM and the Way of Mastery series, or all kinds of other Jeshua channelings that have been done in public. It's really fascinating because the material, the message that comes through is so consistently about the same themes. There's always the uniqueness of the channeler involved, but the actual words and messages are so, to me, congruent in a way that the Bible just never was. And I was told so many times that the Bible harmonizes and there aren't contradictions and it makes sense, while I'm reading all of these contradictions and disharmonic things. And I'm going, wait a second. Am I being told to deny what my eyes see and my ears hear? Because it kind of feels that way. So to me, the Jeshua channelings that are coming through in the last few decades are really hopeful and consistent in their message about our value, our worth, our divinity, and how things like sexuality have been kind of put on this cycle of perpetrator and victim, and that we've swapped roles, that men and women have actually swapped roles throughout the eras, that there were times in the past, like predating recorded history, where women were definitely in charge and manipulative to men and abusive to them sexually and, in any other kind of way that today men are still doing to women. And women have come a long ways in awakening to their own divine feminine energy, but it's the divine masculine energy right now that's really in its deepest state of wounding and misconceptions. And that's why you see so much male-dominated aggressive energy still playing out on the earth. But as Jeshua kind of talks about, it's in its dying agonies. And that gets covered in male and female energy, which is a great chapter. If you haven't listened to that one yet, it's a couple episodes back. And also, I really recommend checking out The Forbidden Female Speaks, which is Pamela channeling Mary Magdalene. And she talks about her actual relationship with Jeshua, as well as the awakened divine feminine energy, and just a lot of other topics on sexuality and self-empowerment that don't feel, again, like some kind of, cheap self-help kind of fluffy deal. It's very authentic and impactful to me. It's very consistent with stuff like the Jeshua channelings in terms of content and themes and ideas. So highly recommend checking that out. I certainly do have my own perspective on this and have gone through a lot on this topic in my own life in terms of moving from shame and guilt into a place of, celebration and ecstasy. I don't know how else to describe it, but as much as people love hearing a 42-year-old man talk about his sex life, I'm going to try and keep that fairly limited, but I think there are some really valuable experiences that my wife and I have been through that have really been healing in terms of just coming from that old patriarchal religious mentality and being able to transform that into something we can enjoy and celebrate and release all of that weird stigma and shame. So I'll get to that at the end of the reading. So for now, please just enjoy the reading. Here we go. Sexuality and Spirituality. Dear friends, I rejoice at being with you again. When I see you, I do not so much see you as the physical bodies that you look at in the mirror. It is your inside that I feel and see, the inner movements of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. I am here to support you on your journey. There is a theme that I would like to discuss today that has had a great impact on you throughout your history on Earth. It is about sexuality and how it is experienced by men and women. This is not an easy subject. Sexuality has become burdened with many judgments, fears, and emotions. Hardly any aspect of it is spontaneous and self-evident anymore. This is the same as saying that the childlike aspect of sexuality, The aspect of the freely exploring innocent child has become lost. You are full of fear and tension when it comes to sexually expressing yourself. I want to address this burden in this channeling, but first I'd like to say a little bit about what sexuality means from a spiritual perspective. Sexuality is the dancing together of male and female energies. Originally, sexuality was more than a physical act. It was meant to be a dance in which all levels or aspects of you and your partner participate. I will distinguish among 4 levels or aspects that can play a role in this dance of energies. 4 aspects of the sexual experience. First, there is the physical level, the aspect of the physical body. The body is innocent. The body knows sexual desire and lust, and this is something that is spontaneously present within the body. The body seeks gratification of its desires, and it is the human or the soul consciousness in the human that determines the way in which the sexual desire is applied and manifested. Again, the body is innocent. It knows lust and desire. There is nothing wrong with that. It can be a source of fun, play, and enjoyment. But the body cannot itself choose in what way it is going to express its sexual energy. It is you, the human being, who is in charge, and the body needs your leadership. When you would like to experience sexuality in the most loving way, the seat of leadership will be in the heart. When you let your heart take charge of your sexual energy, it will find its most joyful expression. The alternative is to let either your thoughts, judgments, or your emotions rule the sexual flow, and you will see that this will cause several blockages in your energy, but I will speak of this below. The second aspect of the sexual dance I wish to distinguish is the emotional level. Sexual union is a deeply emotional act. If you ignore this aspect, you are not fully present in the act, and you cut yourself off from the real meaning of sexuality. In a previous channeling called Dealing with Emotions, we have gone into the issue of emotions extensively. We highlighted the powerful emotions of fear, anger, and sadness, and discussed how they can take you out of your center. When any of these powerful emotions is working in a relationship between 2 people, and they are not consciously recognized and addressed, it will come up when they are intimate together. These emotions may cause psychological reactions of resistance or closing down when you are physically intimate, or the body may be unable to feel lust or excitement. Whenever there are psychological or physical blockages, it is important to deal with them at the level at which they have arisen, the emotional level. When you try to take away physical symptoms without looking at the underlying emotional dynamic, you are disrespectful of yourself and your body. When the body resists intimacy, it gives you a message, pure and clear, that there is an emotional blockage. This may be due to a problem between you and your partner, or it may be an emotional hurt you carry with you from the past. Whatever it is, it needs to be addressed and taken care of in a gentle and loving way before the sexual energy can flow freely. Next, to the emotional level is the level of the heart, which is the seat of feeling. In the same channeling I just mentioned, Dealing with Emotions, we distinguished between emotions and feelings. Feelings belong to the domain of intuition and inner knowing. Your feeling side speaks to you through quiet whispers, filled with wisdom and compassion. Emotions are more dramatic in nature, and we call them explosions of misunderstanding, for that is what they essentially are, explosions of not understanding what is happening to you. When the heart opens up between sexual partners, there is trust, love, and safety between them. When the heart is present in a sexual meeting, you will allow your intuition to take note of what is happening between you when you get physically intimate. You do not hide your emotions, you speak openly of them. Old pain may surface, and it is accepted as such. You are accepted as you are, and this kind of acceptance is the greatest healing power there is. When you connect your heart energy with your sexual energy, great healing can take place in an area that is in much need of it. However, the heart can also play a subtle role in preventing you from experiencing sexuality in a joyful, loving way. The heart may have closed itself off from the joy of sexuality for different reasons. First, there may be a desire in the heart to rise above the physical reality of earth. Second, there may be religious dogmas at work that keep the heart from opening up to what sexuality really is. I will address both of these issues now. The heart can have a strong inclination to rise above the dense plane of material reality. It is a kind of homesickness. There may be a longing there for a unity that is not at all aimed at sexual union, but in fact carries within it a subtle rejection of the earth realm and of sexuality as well. Many of you know the desire to transcend this reality. Many of you remember the energy of love and harmony that you have experienced in non-material realms before you incarnated on Earth. Your heart cries out for the ease and the lightness of this vibration. You try to drink in this energy when you meditate. Often the higher chakras are activated in this way, meaning the heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown chakra. They open up while the lower three chakras, solar plexus, belly, and tailbone, which are vital to your earthly self, are more or less abandoned. In a more unnatural way, this also happens when you take drugs. When you take mind-expanding substances, the upper chakras are artificially ripped open, and you can temporarily experience ecstasy and bliss that make you forget the dense and heavy aspect of earth reality. Although the desire and the longing for transcendence are understandable, it is important to make peace with earth reality. Otherwise, you will create an artificial separation between the upper part and the lower part of your energy field. You will give preference to being in the upper part of your aura with your consciousness, and you will grow a subtle or overt resistance to the reality of the body, the emotions, and sexuality. This creates an imbalance in your energy field. When you are homesick in this way, try to feel the reason and purpose for your being on Earth right now. Your reason to be here is not to transcend Earth, but to bring home down to Earth. This is a sacred journey. The second reason for the heart to shy away from sexuality is religious dogmas, often from past lives. There may have been lives in which you took vows of chastity, or in which you were taught to feel shame or guilt about bodily pleasure and sexuality. These energies may still linger in your heart. Because of them, you may have negative judgments about or subtle resistance to physical intimacy. These judgments and sentiments do not rest on truth. Again, I wish to say that the body itself is innocent. Lust, desire, and all the physical processes that make you long for sexual union are natural, healthy processes. The imbalances that occur in the area of sexuality are almost always due to the non-physical levels, of which I have now discussed two. The fourth and last level is the aspect of the mind. On the mental level, there can be moral or spiritual beliefs that keep you from enjoying sexuality. Most of these beliefs are religious in nature. On the spiritual level, you may feel that the physical body is a kind of prison. The non-physical reality of the higher realms, as you call them, not I, is so glorified that the physical reality gets undervalued. This occurs frequently among lightworkers. Especially among them, there often is resistance to the pleasure and enjoyment that sexuality can provide. This stems partly from religious and moral beliefs, and partly from sheer inexperience with this aspect of life. Most lightworker souls have spent many lifetimes as priests, nuns, or similar roles, withdrawn from the community, without a partner or family. They focused so much on the spiritual that the area of sexuality was neglected. In spiritual or religious people, there is often a lack of respect for the body in its natural expression. This is truly regrettable, for it is the expression into matter that is regarded on our side to be the most sacred journey for a soul to go on. To sow and reap the seeds of your divinity so far away from home in the reality of matter and form is a sacred undertaking. It is a divine, creative act of the highest order. Perhaps you have at some time been present at someone's deathbed, or you have witnessed a childbirth. In those moments, the souls enter or lets go of the dance with matter. Both points in time are surrounded by an atmosphere of sacredness. You can sense this as a deep, enveloping silence filled with honor, which announces the coming or leaving of the soul. There is but the deepest respect on our side of the veil for what you do at those moments. The dance with matter is sacred, and you detest it so often. Sexuality in its true meaning is a dance in matter which at the same time rises above matter. In balanced sexual self-expression, you transcend material reality without ignoring or repressing it, without abandoning the lower three chakras, and without seeking ecstasy only through the upper chakras. Complete sexuality integrates all levels of your being. Sexuality bridges the gap between matter and spirit. When two people are physically intimate in a loving way, all the cells in their body vibrate a little faster. They start to dance a little. A gateway is opened to an energetic reality with a slightly higher vibration and a lighter feeling. After a sexual joining in which all of you participates, your body, soul, and mind, you feel peaceful and joyful at the same time. There is a quiet ecstasy. The cells of your body have tasted the energy of love, and in that moment you brought the reality of love a little closer to you. You channeled the divine energy of love that so dearly wishes to flow through you, and that has only the greatest respect for your sexual nature. If the energy on all four levels flows together in a sexual joining, it is an act of divine creation. That children are being born from such an act is only natural. When the dance of male and female is performed in such a joyous way, only goodness and sweetness can come of it. If a child is conceived in such a way, it enters the earth realm on a slide of love and light. It is the most loving welcome that a soul can have on earth. Because the sexual energies are so precious, we ask you, please deal respectfully with your sexuality. When there are problems, fears, or tensions around it, do not judge sexuality in itself or give up on it, for it is a natural part of you and a sacred one. Sexual problems and the battle of the sexes. I would now like to go into the history of sexuality and then say something about the specific problems that women and men experience nowadays in their sexual self-expression. Much has happened in the area of the sexual. At its core, sexuality carries a great potential of light, but because of that, there is also the potential for great misuse. The history I wish to speak of is one of the power struggle between men and women. This history is ancient and actually began at the time when the extraterrestrial galactic empires started to interfere with life on this Earth. See the Lightworker series for a detailed account of this process. Before that, Earth was a kind of paradise, a Garden of Eden in which beauty and innocence prevailed. We will not discuss this era here, but will simply note that you are in the end phase of a power struggle that is much older than the 5,000 years of written history. In the last stage of this history, men clearly played the role of perpetrator and oppressor, but it was not always so. There have been times in which the woman was much more powerful in the public as well as the private domain of life. She oppressed the male energy as well, in cruel and sadistic ways. Woman is not naturally the oppressed or subdued sex, nor is she by definition the most loving sex. Your stereotypes of women as sweet but powerless, and of men as tough but insensitive, say more about the last phase of the above-mentioned history than about men and women as such. There have been times predating written history in which matriarchal societies were regarded as standard. In those times, women also used their energies in a destructive way, being disrespectful of the individual life force and creativity in each human being. There was a time when women had power over men. Women controlled and manipulated men by using the powers of emotion and intuition that they have a natural affinity with. They also used their psychic abilities to control men. For example, there were sacrifices and rituals where men were tortured and killed. I want to stress for your official history that this aspect draws a one-sided picture of the relation between men and women. The oppression of women by man has been evident for the whole period covered by your written history. But the grudge and hatred that men have displayed and may still display against women has not come from nothing. In addition to the cultural traditions and habits that influence them, there are also deep emotional wounds in the male collective soul that stem from a much older era. Without going into detail about this era, I would like to invite you to feel for yourself whether it is possible that you experienced this. For women, the question is, can you imagine that you exerted power over men once, and that you successfully tried to control their energy? And for men, the question is, can you imagine that this took place on a large scale and that you were the weaker sex? Maybe you will receive certain images or fantasies by asking this question inside. Let your intuition show you and watch the emotions that surface. This may be surprising. Within the collective male, soul hatred and resentment had arisen because of this ancient history. This has come out in oppression of the female energy in the area of politics, but also in the area of religion, particularly through the church. The idea that sexuality is sinful, or at best a necessary evil, is a male line of thinking that was influenced by hatred and grudges resulting from the repression of male sexuality in another era. Male sexuality was at that time considered to be an instrument for procreation without respect for the feeling side of men and the emotional ties between a father and his children. Often, children were raised by the mother in separation from the father, and hardly any attention was paid to what the father thought and wanted. Important values were passed on through the mother figure, and the inferiority of men was one such value. Man was a workhorse rather than an equal partner. In addition to the church being a bulwark of frustrated male energy, the world of science also displays a hostility to the female energy. Although science and religion are in many respects natural enemies, they are united in their resistance to the intuitive, flowing aspect of the female energy. The church dogmas are rigid and stifling, but the scientific method is limiting too in another manner. While the impetus behind modern science was enlightening and innovative in the desire to dethrone false authority, it has gotten stuck in a narrow kind of rational thinking that doesn't allow the female energy to participate. Scientific thinking is analytical and logical, but it does not open up enough to the imagination and to extrasensory sources of observation. The aversion that many scientists have to the paranormal and to anything that cannot be explained by rational reasoning is, however, partly due to a soul memory of pain and humiliation dating back to a time when psychic powers were abused by women and were used against them as an instrument of manipulation. I speak of this ancient history because I would like to make clear that in the battle of the sexes there are ultimately no offenders and victims, no good guys and bad guys, because you have all been both. It has been a struggle between the male and the female energies in which these energies became opposites, whereas they originally were complementary to each other. In this day and age, both men and women are invited to join forces again, and to rediscover the joy and honor of the original dance of female and male. Essentially, the female energy is leading and inspiring, while the male energy is serving and protecting. The female energy is the inspiration behind any creation. The male aspect takes care of the manifestation in form and action. Both energies work through every human, through every individual, whether male or female. Whether you are a man or a woman is not really relevant. It is the balance and relationship between both energies within you that counts. Blockages in female sexuality. I will now speak of energy blockages in the area of sexuality which specifically apply to women or men. In women, it is the area of the first and second chakra, tailbone and umbilicus, that is most battered and hurt as a result of sexual oppression and violence over the centuries. For quite some millennia, women have been framed into a subservient role in almost all areas of society, and this still goes for many places on Earth. With regard to sexuality, this inequality manifested as rape, assault, and humiliation on a large scale. As a result of this, many women, indeed the collective female soul, have suffered incredibly. There are deep emotional wounds which need time, love, and utmost care to heal. Often the drive for sexual union is felt by women as a longing of the heart or as a spiritual feeling. But when they get physically intimate, they find that they cannot express their sexual energy freely because of energy blockages in the first and second chakra. In those energy centers are soul memories of sexuality that was forced upon them and humiliated them. These experiences were so painful that the woman withdrew her energy, her consciousness, from the area of the belly. When this part of the body is now approached again in a sexual way, the muscles instinctively tighten, or the emotional body automatically signals resistance. The physical cells are aware of the trauma and do not go along so easily with the invitation to dance. They want to shut off and create a barrier to protect you from more aggression. This reaction is utterly understandable and should always be dealt with in a most respectful way. Using any kind of force to take away the resistance is in a way violating the hurt centers again. When you have these emotions as a woman, it is very important to become fully aware of them. There may be anger there, resistance, or fear with regard to physical intimacy. And all of these emotions are often older than the relationship you are in, older even than this lifetime. There may be very old traumas in those lowest chakras that have caused deep emotional scars. Specifically, I would advise women who recognize this pain to get acquainted with lifetimes in which they were the offender/perpetrator as opposed to victim. Or if you find it difficult to access previous lifetimes, get in touch with the energy of the offender or powerful woman inside you. This may sound very strange, but the reason is this. When you have been the victim of sexual violence, this has caused a lot of anger in your energy field. There may be anger there from several lifetimes. This anger blocks you and keeps you imprisoned in a feeling of powerlessness and victimhood. To release anger, you need understanding. You need to understand why and what for. You need to see the larger picture. When you can imagine yourself as a powerful woman who could be merciless and cruel towards men and feel inside that this is also a part of you, then the anger can dissolve. A more thoroughgoing understanding can arise, an inside knowing that you are part of a larger karmic story in which you played both the role of offender and of victim. It is nearly impossible to release your emotions of pain, powerlessness, and victimhood without also looking at the other side of you, the dark side. You need not necessarily go back to past lifetimes to recognize this dark part inside you. You can also become more aware of it by watching yourself in your day-to-day life. When you feel this energy, the will to exert power or hurt others, you can sense that you have not only been the helpless victim of outside circumstances. There is a karmic tie between offender and victim. Both roles reflect aspects of yourself. As soon as you know and accept your dark side, you can look at your own inner wounds in a different way and start to forgive. When there is understanding, anger can dissolve, and you can get in touch with the layers of emotions beneath. The sadness, the grief, the pain that is there on many levels, also in the body itself. It is very important for women to acknowledge the offender aspect in themselves and to work with it. When there is hatred and grudges in you with regard to sexuality, realize that the more hatred and anger you feel, the more you identify with the role of victim, and the more you rob yourself of your freedom. Try to feel inside you that in the arena of sexuality, a karmic game is being played out in which you have fulfilled both roles, the good guy as well as the bad guy. From there, you can get to a place of forgiveness, forgiving yourself as well as someone else. Things happen for a reason. Acts of violence and repression may seem meaningless, but there is always a story behind them. And whenever there is sexual violence involved, it leaves deep impressions on all 4 levels of the human being. Blockages in male sexuality. With regard to the male experience of sexuality, the blockages that occur are mostly on the level of the heart or the head. At these levels, there may be a fear of surrendering, a fear of deep emotional intimacy. Most of the time, this fear reaches farther back than you can remember. It relates to the era in which women dominated men. This made the game of sexual attraction, that initially was innocent and spontaneous, threatening. Men learned that it was dangerous to openly show their emotions and open their heart to their partner. Within men, there are deep-seated fears about surrendering to their feeling side, and these fears need not necessarily manifest on the physical level. They may participate in the physical act of sex while keeping their feelings separate. So the man may be sexually present at the physical level while his feeling nature is partially absent. His emotions are locked away because of his fear to open up and become vulnerable to rejection once again. There are old soul remembrances there of being abandoned and emotionally scarred. Patience and love. In general, the energy blockages are somewhat different in men and women. Therefore, it is very important to communicate openly with each other about what you feel and sense when you are together. When you truly trust your partner, you can investigate without shame where your sexual energy gets stuck when you are intimate. This you can do by simply becoming aware, when there is a flow of excitement and intimacy arising between you, to what extent you are allowing yourself to feel and express it. See if you feel stuck or blocked in any part of your body or in any part of your emotions and feelings. Do you feel a warm glow in your heart when you are together? Do you feel a spiritual openness towards the other? Are you prepared to meet the other in his or her totality? It sounds strange, but you are afraid of real intimacy. You all strongly desire a fulfilling relationship. On the streets, almost every billboard refers to the ideal of an emotionally and sexually gratifying relationship. But true intimacy frightens you. When someone else comes very close and you are asked to take off all of your masks, all kinds of inhibitions arise that you are not aware of. In the moments that they surface, try not to judge yourself for it. Instead, see it as an opportunity to investigate those inhibitions and blockages within you. No one is free of them. Nearly all people have blockages that prevent them from experiencing sexuality in the full sense that I described in the beginning. That is why I want to ask all of you to look at the flow of sexual energy inside you with loving awareness, whether you are alone or in a relationship, and to treat those blockages you find with care and respect. Force is the worst counselor in these matters. Patience and love are vital. Keep the longing for a true and complete experience of sexuality alive. You need not throw away the baby with the bathwater. The desire is sound. The road to a full and joyful experience of sexuality may be long and winding, but along the road you will grow love and compassion for yourself as well as for others, and this is so immensely valuable in your human world. You are healing an ancient history of struggle between men and women. The male and female energies want to come together again and join in a dance of joy and creativity. Anything that you contribute to this at an individual level has a positive influence on the collective soul of men and women. Your self-love makes the energies of patience and love available for others. End of chapter. Thank you so much again for listening to another episode, and I really hope that this one was helpful if this is something that you've been hung up on or have had a lot of shame and guilt and issues with. And again, I really recommend listening to Male and Female Energy, which was a couple episodes ago. You can find it all in the playlist on my YouTube channel. But also the book, The Forbidden Female Speaks by Pamela is really highly recommended by me in terms of also expanding greatly on this topic. Now, as far as my own personal journey, and if you're not interested in hearing about, again, a 42-year-old dude's sexual journey, I'm going to keep it low on details and tasteful, but if you're not into that, feel free to just skip ahead to the end of the episode or hit the next button or whatever you got to do. It's fine. So my wife and I both have really gone through the hamster wheel of all of the stuff that people go through when they're raised believing that their bodies are kind of a forbidden thing, a dirty thing that you're not supposed to defile, and that, sex is only for your wedding night. And really there's no talk about the pleasure part or sex for pleasure or for recreation or just, again, having fun. It's all about the seriousness of it, and it's only for procreation, really. But, God kind of made it fun, but not too fun. And, certainly no talk about making sure that your partner is, especially if she's a woman, is satisfied, and taking care of the sexual needs of each other. It's really just kind of about business. And, I had to do a lot of my own digging and self-education on this topic. And unfortunately, my wife did not really have that. She had so much, I think, fear and shame drilled into her that she kind of was afraid to even explore it on her own. So, she went to private schools that just wouldn't even talk about the human body, sexuality, anything of that nature. And I believe her mom just handed her some book that was like a Christian book on sex and just said, here you go. And that was the extent of her conversation with her parents about her body and sexuality. And I'm not here to bash her parents or anything, but it's kind of a similar story with my parents. So it's more of a generational thing, and again, that religious dogma seeping through. But it's just so destructive to like wall your kids off from even the discussion about a natural part of their body that is clearly something they're thinking about and that they want to explore in some capacity. Now, I'm not, of course, advocating for just let your kids go nuts and, and be super like promiscuous and get into situations that are really difficult. Obviously, there are consequences to anything we do. And in this world, there's polarity. So it's not just about having, free, open, fun sex with no consequences. We do have to take into account, this is how children are born. There are diseases that can be transmitted this way. And of course, that is another area where there's a lot of fear-mongering, shame, and misinformation. But, you do have to do everything in this life with a balance and with taking multiple things into account. That's why it's so hard, because we're used to being in this state of just pure creative, now moment energy and that spark of just being able to do as we please, basically, again, in the moment. So here it's all about, having to balance things, and it's difficult. But getting back to kind of my own journey, it took a lot of years for my wife and I to really let go of all of the shackles of our upbringing and to just kind of say, you know what, screw all that stuff. Let's just kind of start over here and let's learn to appreciate each other in ways that opens the door for, actually having a good sex life. And again, that took a lot of work. It really ultimately took us leaving behind our Christian faith and walking away from those ideas and those teachings. And that was kind of when things really started to open up. And we really were able to step into a celebration of sexuality instead of like, oh, we can't really talk about this too openly, right? So for anyone who also was raised in a religious environment or an environment where you were told that your body was this taboo thing that you had to, wall off from the rest of reality, I hope that these words in this channeling really help kind of break down some of those misconceptions. It really did for me. It really kind of helped illuminate where divine sexuality comes into play. And actually, if you're curious about this topic, which I've been really curious about, it is covered in the Forbidden Female Speaks with Mary Magdalene as far as how does sex work on the astral plane, as souls. Do we get to have sex? And basically she's saying yes, that there's still intimacy. We don't have physical bodies, but you can still enter this, I guess, engagement that is sexual in nature and that still has its share of complications, but obviously not the same as here. We're still in a different, that's getting into a whole lot more complicated kind of esoteric ideas. But so, in the world of souls, we're still in a state of separation from source. It's not nearly as convincing as the separation we feel here. We're a lot more connected to our spirit and to the divinity and love of Creator, but we still have hang-ups and we still have things to work through. It's a process, and we work our way up to where we essentially merge back with Source, and we're no longer even individuated anymore. But we also are like in a whole new consciousness reality. Again, don't ask me to try and sum up this kind of stuff in a quick amount of time. I'm not sure why I opened that can of worms, but so like anything I say, take it with a grain of salt. I'm not a guru or an expert or a spiritual master or someone who has ascended to a level of I can just give out infinite advice and you should follow it to a T. You really have to listen to what's inside of you. The podcast is called You Are the One You Seek. I'm not out here to try and be the one you seek. I'm trying to point you back to yourself, because truly that is where the answers lie. Yeah, you might get advice and encouragement and ideas from other people that help kind of propel you in a way that is moving forward in exploring the things about yourself, but you have to be, at the end of the day, the one that is enough for you, and you are. You totally are that. You might not believe it because you've been let down by others and by yourself enough as this human form that you feel like, well, how am I enough? Look at my past. I'm a total screw up, or I've made so many mistakes. Those are just mistakes that you made with the error of thought that you were separate from divine pure source. Of course, we're going to act the fool when we have completely cut ourselves off from the knowledge of our divinity. So you have to let yourself off the hook, and you have to be able to forgive yourself and let it go and say, all right, if I just kind of start over in my mind and say, all right, so I am God in the flesh, I've made some mistakes, I can let them go, but now what? Well, now it's about really being quiet and listening for that guidance, that feeling that's deep in you, not the emotions. Like Jeshua says that emotions are a explosion of misunderstanding, and they're like our children, and feelings are like our teachers, our guides. They're what is propelling us towards a destination that is for our own growth. And emotions are meant to be recognized and surrounded with awareness and love, but not embraced as this is who I am and I have to give in to every aspect and thought of this emotion that's happening right now. It's all about choice, right? We have to choose everything. But we've already made the choice ahead of time that we're not going to be left out in the dust, that we're all going home together. As Ram Dass says, we're all walking each other home. It's true. But at the end of the day, you have to awaken to your own light. You have to be enough for yourself. And you have to stop listening to people like me guiding you one way or the other. Even Jeshua harps on this over and over, that he's not the ascended master that we've come here to seek. He's not above us. Yes, he might be older as a soul than some of us, but that doesn't mean anything really. That's just about experience in an illusory world. So in an illusory universe, we're all in the same playing field because we were all created equal, truly. But we were all created unique, so we get to do this our own way, which is just it's so wildly freaking cool to me. Like, just how open-ended I think this thing really is. But it's hard to feel that way when you're, of course, stuck in the confines of the human experience, but also there's so much freedom within that experience. So I feel like I'm doing a lot of back and forth, meandering, rambling, so I'm going to go ahead and just cut it off. Maybe I should stop insulting myself when I'm sharing my heart, but I don't know. I've heard myself speak enough in my life and kind of have a hard time really driving home a point that it sort of drives me insane to do this at times. I really love sharing with everybody who listens, but there's still that part of me that's like, dude, who are you? Who are you to do this? Why should people listen to you? And that's the point. You shouldn't. Just let me be a traffic light that is reminding you to turn back towards yourself, to make a U-turn and stop going down the wrong expressway to heartbreak. When you just listen to your emotions and the insane pace of the world, or your ego screaming to be satiated, it's hard to make that call and say, this isn't working for me. I need to turn around and go back to what works for me. And that's always going to be what's within you. That guide that is the Holy Spirit that is within each of us. That is the point where we are getting pure, undistilled knowledge. And it doesn't mean we can just distribute that freely to the world and go, here's the truth. It's about what's true for each individual person. And that is always going to come back to love. Love is the unescapable, undefeatable, perfect thing that exists that creates anything in the first place. And so we're always going to go back to love because we are love. We are love incarnate. We're just having a weird time pretending we're not for a little while. So I hope that makes sense. And if not, you can send me a nasty email and call me some horrible names. You have the keys, 639@gmail.com. I don't know why I'm asking for nasty emails. I really haven't gotten any yet. And that's wonderful, but I can take criticism too. So if you have some negative feedback for me, I can handle that. I'm not encouraging you to go negative, but I like honesty. So again, I don't need my ego to be boosted up like I am the guy who knows everything about everything. I'm just figuring out myself. I'm just trying to piece it together as I go. So I think that's about enough. Again, you can email me. I gave the email address. You can find me on Instagram at You Are The One You Seek. Please, if you feel so led, hit the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, check out the playlist of all the other Jeshua channelings, and stick around because I will be doing other things other than just reading from books. I'll be interviewing people again, and I don't know, doing whatever I guess my heart leads me to with this podcast. So, yeah, thanks for listening, and have a absolutely wonderful day. And make sure that you go in love and light, and namaste.